The competitive 40K network presents Art of War.
Art of War.
Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Art of War 40K podcast. This week, we are joined once again by Niklas Fritschen from Germany. Niklas is a return guest and a demon savant, and he's back after another fantastic showing, undefeated run at the Alpine Leoban Cup. Not only did he win, but his team won, and he's running a really unique and exciting Shadow Legion demon list here, and I'm so excited to talk about it because you know I love the demons. Niklas, how are you doing?
Hi, Nick. I'm doing wonderful and so stoked to be back on the podcast. Really awesome and excited to talk about demons as always. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have such a blast with you on this episode. This is going to be so exciting. Listeners, you're in for a treat. This is part one of a two-part episode. In part one, we're going to talk about Niklas, how his development as a player has gone since last time, and basically how he came up with this amazing demon list, and then of course how it all operates on the table, the strategy, the tactics, all that good stuff. But that's only the first half of the conversation. The next half is going to be for our patrons. You can subscribe to that on aow40k.com. We're going to go game by game by game through Niklas's tournament experience out the Alpine Cup. And let me tell you, this is a man I played. The devil is in the details. I cannot wait to get into these games. You don't want to miss it. That's patreon.com/AOW40K. All right, Niklas, enough about the spieling and dealing. Let's talk about you. Last time we chatted was right after WCW, where you and I had played with the demons, and you were running the index attachment. This was back when my Bringers of Flame. It was a different time. Tell me about your 40K journey since then.
Wait, lots stuff happened. Very exciting journey, I can say that. I was still pretty new back then. Just had like my first major wins that led me to qualify to the WCW. And since then, everything's been kind of on the focus of making it to Team Germany. So I get to play at the WTC in 2025. So lots of team tournament preparations with my own local team and like applying for the team. And that's been going pretty well. I've been playing a bunch of team tournaments with Team Germany, been to every single one that we went to. And now officially, Team Germany isn't fixed yet, but most likely in the team there. So that's really good. Been playing a lot of singles as well. Stick to demons the whole time. Never pivoted off them at all. And making a name for myself, which is a very fun experience to have.
Dude, it's amazing to see you grow as a player, especially with one of my favorite factions. It's inspiring to watch, and I've played you. You're such a gentleman on the table too. You're doing it in such a great way, and you're on Team Germany now. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. So quickly too, and it's been such a pleasure to enjoy this like international stage, playing for your country against the other teams. We've been going to a bunch of like basically every team tournament in Europe that's available we've went to, and it's so much fun to play on that stage with all these amazing players from all other countries. It's like peak 40K experience. Like, wonderful. I'm loving this time.
That is so amazing to hear, dude. Tell me a little bit about the experience. Unveil the mystery that is the German WTC team, if you will.
It's it's a chaotic ride, I can tell that for sure. We have a pretty unique system in Germany where we have a constant changing roster of players. So we have like a first team of 8 people and a second team of 8 people, and it's constantly changing. Together with like an academy system where like people who are really good at faction or really aspiring to be there kind of join. And it's really for every single team tournament we go to, which is like once a month almost, it's just a new team based on what's strong right now and who's doing great at singles, team events, and like scrims. So you can be in first team 1 week and the second team the next, and it changes. And it's not like by this deadline, we will confirm and announce the 8 people playing at the WTC, but it's more like, this is the roster. All of you are eligible to play, and we'll see what's good, what's working, like in July, basically. So
That's a really nice way to handle it, honestly. I know for Team America, we just had our roster selection like a couple weeks ago, and thankfully I've made the team. But it's tough
congrats,
because
Nick.
thank you very much. It's tough, basically, for the team because you're picking not with the perfect knowledge of the rules, right? Like we're going to get balance status slate between now and then. We're going to get new codexes, presumably. Who knows what'll happen? And you have to pick players who are adaptable and stuff. And I love the freedom your roster selection or lack thereof kind of enables you because it's just like you're all on the team. You're all going and having the experience of being on the WTC team. It's nice too that you live in Europe. There's so many amazing team events to go over there. I'm jealous.
Yeah. I think also it's kind of necessary to do it this way in Germany, considering that we have this kind of culture of faction specialists, I would say. So, for example, with Tim Schneider on Wotan, me on Demons, Leif Westermann is currently in Team 1, which you might or might not know. He's only playing Eldari, right? Like, so we have lots of people who really hyper focus on one faction. So it's hard to just say, oh, this person is on the team when you don't know if the next data slate will just nuke the faction or make it a different faction who we have a specialist for super broken, right? So since we don't have these generalists, or not that many, we have a couple, you kind of need to have this flexible team format. Otherwise, it won't work in our team. Yeah.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's start talking about how you've developed your demons to be what they are today, right? Shadow Legion came out a few months ago, and the ideas for Shadow Legion have been kind of endless. The only thing that people seem to like for sure consistently are like the Fade Thirster and Be'lakor. What was your kind of initial impressions of Shadow Legion when it came out, and how did you think that compared to your other demon options?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was at first a bit skeptical because basically we were coming off a time where we had Legion of Excess, which was just pure raw power, right? Just stupidity,
Right.
to be honest. With that getting nerfed, you go back to Index, which was still fine and still good with like 5 greater demons, especially. I like that. Um, and so then Shadow Legion comes and it's very different, right? No epic heroes, which immediately just limits what you can bring, right? And at first, while the Fade to Darkness or the enhancement that lets you go back to Deep Strike after killing something was obviously powerful, right? The rest of the list was super in the open, right? Do you play 60 Nurglings and 50 Plague Bearers and just stat check your opponents? Do you play Blood Crushers because of the advance in charge, whatever, right? Like how many big ones do you play? Scout 9, Great Unclean One, etc. Right, all that was in the air. For me, the main appeal at first was the lone orb shooting, especially using Havocs from CSM with las cannons. I thought that the loner bubble of Be'lakor lets you really hold these long range angles, maybe, and you can spend like turn 1 and 2 picking up screens with the Bloodthirster and going back to darkness, picking up like tanks that want to push with the Havocs, and then late game going all in, right? Like that was my first idea, and I did a bunch of math with Havocs and thought, well, that's pretty good. Like 3 squads of them kill a Lemurras even in cover, and one of them can kill a Rhino, and maybe with the rules to hit of Be'lakor, and they just suck.
They
Oh
just
my
don't
god,
do that,
Havocs suck.
right?
I played so many games with 3 of them in my lists, and yeah, no, they didn't kill rhinos like ever or do anything really.
Dude,
And
I can empathize so hard. I wanted the Havocs to work so bad. I love the Havocs. I've been
yeah,
trying to make Havocs work. They're so good on paper.
yes,
It makes no
yes,
sense. And then you up down, you north cover for 1 CP, you reap
yeah, oh my
sustained hits,
god.
reroll ones. Like it should just happen. It just
I did
doesn't.
so much math with them on unit crunch and everything. Like, damn, they're so good. Like, they're so strong, right? No, they performed so bad over many, many games. But the fun thing is that like my win rate on these practice games was still like really good, even though I was basically playing with only 1,500 points, which made me think, the rest of this stuff is pretty strong. Let's like just ditch the Havocs, they're not working right. and at first, for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I thought, well, without Havocs, there's no benefit to Shadow Legion. You should just play Incursion, because if you're playing pure melee, the 6-inch charger is just stronger. I figured, at least. I thought that's just a better way to play this melee pressure army. And so I kind of gave up on the idea for a bit. And I didn't see any other people really having huge success with it either. So I figured, Shadow Legion is cute and all, but Havoc suck, so let's just play Index. And I did that at the Eurotrash team tournament, where we played with France, Belgium, and some other teams there. And some countries picked Shadow Legion. It wasn't that successful. And Index was stronger on that tournament, for example. So I was kind of confirmed with that. I also played my 5 big demon list there. And I kept telling my coach, yeah, Shadow Legion is cute, but not that good.
I was following you during this time. I watched your ETC performance where you annihilated Yunari and all kinds of good things with your 5 monster demon list. And I thought that was super exciting. And then I was shocked to see you went back to Shadow Legion. I'm so curious to hear why and where you went from this point.
Well, I went back to it and I saw more and more discussion about Screamers. And I mean, I knew Screamers are good. I've always been loving Screamers, but as these cheap scoring pieces, action pieces, move blocking, there's 3 of them, right? And so I always knew they were great, and I knew they were great in Shadow Legion with a -1 to it. And I kept people saying 6 of them are really good. So I, played Shadow Legion, ditched all the Havocs for 3 times Raptors, which was actually in my very first list ideas. I always had 15 Raptors in them, but then I ditched them for Havocs and stuff. So I just filled up the 500 points of Havocs left over with, 9 Screamers, so pumping my 3x3 up to 3x6 and 15 Raptors. Didn't change anything else. And that just worked really well immediately. Turns out Screamers are really, really good in Shadow Legion, and turns out Raptors are really, really good in Shadow Legion. And when I put them on the table, for the first couple of practice games, it just clicked, and I was okay. Wow, this is legit. This needs to be more explored. And after a couple of games, I was convinced that this is
That's
very
amazing.
strong.
I'm so excited to hear about this. Raptors are not a unit that I think we've had talked about on the podcast since it was created in 2020. Yeah. I can Raptors of all units. Okay, Niklas, let's start here. Break down your list from me top to bottom. Read it off.
Absolutely. It's quite simple in the end. So Shadow Legion, Be'lakor as the Warlord, and then my only other big demon is the Bloodthirster, and he's using the enhancement Fade to Darkness, which lets him go back into Deep Strike after killing something in the fight phase. I have 1 unit of 6 Nurglings, 1 unit of Seekers, that's the Scouting Cavalry from Slanesh, 1 solo Beast of Nurgle, and then we get 18 Screamers, so 3x6. We have 15 Raptors, so 3x5. We have a Cursed Cultist unit led by the Dark Commune, so ACDC, with the Scout 9 enhancement. And then finally, we have 1 unit of Cultists. That's it already. So basically, we spam the maximum number of Screamers and Raptors, have ACDC, Be'lakor, Bloodthirster, and then a little bit of scoring units in the Beast, the Seekers, and the Cultists. It's really straightforward.
You've got to break this down for me. What is the strategy for this army? How does it actually operate on the table?
Right. It's I would say rather simple up front, but just like with the old Index demons, it's quite complex in the way it can execute that. So first of all, one of the main angles you can clearly, I think, see is a bit of a stat check angle, right? 18 Screamers with 4 invuln, -1 to hit, reviving with 1 CP stratagem. It's tough for many armies to get through. Combine that with an ACDC unit, which is 28 wounds with a 5-up invuln, 6-up feed on pain, blood switch move. That's a lot of just infantry / beast models to go through, right? So you kind of have this part of the list where you can just kind of rush people with it. Then everything is really, really fast. Screamers move 14 inches. They fly. They go through walls. Raptors move 12 inches infantry, right? Seekers are 14-inch moving, 9-inch scout. The Curse Cultists have 9-inch scout, 6-inch move, advance and charge. The Bloodthirster moves 12 advance and charge, right? So everything is really fast. Most of it is flying, so you can't move, block it, or trap it. And everything can kind of rush you down, get in combat, tie everything up, and really control the battlefield that way. So that's like the main, I guess.
So it's very
obvious
is it like a
angle.
jail army? Like you're trying to move block and trap your opponent in your deployment zone?
Yes, you can totally play it that way. And there's many games where I did play it that way, as just I rush you down, especially with the ACDC unit and the Seekers. Like they can be like the first wave that just trap you in, kill something, tag up like every single unit you have, and then comes the Screamers, which again just jail you down, and you can't kill them easily because they're so tanky. That's definitely one approach, which is very, very strong actually. It's one of the strongest versions of this in the game, I think, right now. And while all this is happening, of course, you have this incredibly broken Bloodthirster with the Warp Talon rule, right? Because he just gets kills every single turn, right? And it's actually really hard to stop him. We can get more into detail about this because I know many people think, oh, you just heroic and then he can't go up. No, I have 20 movement 14 models. You cannot heroic, trust me. Like that stuff is actually very nice. So you have this Bloodthirster to play passive. You can just say, hey, if you just send out one scoring unit a turn, cool, Bloodthirster picks it up, easy peasy, goes back in, right? Like I lose nothing, you lose units. Yeah, so you can play it passive with this, like a trading game where you don't trade actual resources because the Bloodthirster is just stupid.
So you
can
have
just
is it like you have
do it.
two different play patterns? One where you go
Mhm.
first and one where you go second. You go first, you take the jail approach and really jam someone in their deployment zone. And the other, you play this passive trade game where like 5 Raptors go out for area denial and the Bloodthirster kills something and leaves, and this really slow paced game.
Yes, you could say that. And let's say this, I always kind of approach the game expecting a slow game. I always consider, okay, if my opponent plays really careful, plays really trady, how do I play against it? That's always my approach going into the game. And then, but as the moment I see an opening or like maybe a mistake or maybe like the opponent pushes, the moment I see an opportunity to just rush my opponent down and just go all in, I mean, I take it every time. That's just the player I am, and it's also what this list does really well. And since the threat ranges are actually insane, um, it's really easy for your opponent to, I guess, make the mistake that lets you go in. So many times my games very quickly turn into the rushdown and jail version, even though my game plan, I guess, going in isn't actually doing that. I never think, oh, I'm going to rush this opponent down this game.
Really?
Right? I always think, okay, if he plays it passive, this is how I have to play, and then I just use the opportunity when they arrive, which they often do.
So talk to me about how this actually kind of allows you to rush people down and go kill them essentially. Like Raptors are not a high damage piece, but like what are they offering you?
Okay, well, yeah, so let's first talk about the Raptors, and then we can talk about kind of how I can go in.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Raptors, as you've said, very unused unit, very, well, let's say weak unit in almost every army you could bring them in, right? What do Raptors do actually? Raptors have this data sheet rule where they force battle shock tests at the beginning of the fight phase with everything in engagement range, and they have a 6-inch bubble of -1 to battle shock and leadership tests. That by itself is like cute, fine, whatever, not great. But when you play it in demons, you still get the demon army rule, which is -1 battle shock when your opponent is in shadow of chaos, which is always because I have a lot of models, I push you. And then when you fail a battle shock test, you take D3 damage. So when you take this, the Raptors itself usually do D3 damage when they charge you, which is like a little tank shock or a little like JPI impact mortal wounds, right? And this synergies very well with your demon rule. It shuts down defensive stratagems. Lots of this army has AP1 or AP2 in combat. Actually, everything except for Belloc and Bloodthirster has AP1 or 2. So AOC really messes with you. You oftentimes fight in a lot of places. So if one of two melee units fails the Battle Shock test, they cannot interrupt. So you're wonderfully fine. Lots of opponents have fight on death, like orcs. You just say, nope, you don't. Against like knights, Imperial or Chaos Knights, they test on 9s. So getting that Battle Shock, not allowing them to activate Phenopains or just taking that D3 damage, that kind of pushes breakpoints very often.
Right.
So that's that. Then they have some nice little guns, like some plasma shots, which is very useful for killing like 5 Space Marines. Like Bellacore plus 5 Raptors will kill every Space Marine 5-man squad that you can show them. They just die, which is very useful in some situations. And in melee, they still hit decently as a training unit, right? And it's actually lots of this is about hitting this critical mass of fast flying units. And you already have that with these screamers, and the Raptors just add a ton of that. At some point, you just have too much quick infantry that overwhelms your opponent, and the Raptors kind of all of these little things together make them, in my opinion, by far the best CSM unit you could run in Shadow Legion. Like, I don't think there's a single different unit that tops the usefulness of Raptors in Shadow Legion.
Wow. I know you've tested all kinds of different options extensively. Like, everyone's talked about the Lord that does the CP up and down or pairing the Bloodthirster with Warp Talons and, Raptors of all things for you to land on. I mean, it's amazing.
And it's fun because everyone who watches my games, like my teammates and also opponents, after the game, they're like, man, these Raptors, oh my God, they were so good. Wow, they are incredible. Like every time at the end, my opponent is like, man, these Raptors, holy crap.
I want
to
experience this. I want to play against these Raptors. Okay, so I get the play patterns and I love the style. How do you actually deal damage though? I mean, like the Bloodthirster, Bellacore, they're obviously hard hitters, right? But then Screamers, they're okay. Walking through these Screamers and the Raptors, how's it come together?
Right. So for damage dealing, the Screamers themselves, obviously, they don't actually deal that much, obviously. But let's take like a War Dog, like a Carnivore, for example, right? You have 18 attacks, hitting on 3, so 12 hits, wounding on 4s, 6 wounds, 7 on 5s, 4 go through, that's 8 damage. Now, if you use the flyover mortals, that's another 3 mortal wounds on average. So suddenly you have an average output of 11 damage. If you pair that with a Raptor charge or a plasma gun or Bellacore shooting or we will once to hit, okay, there you go. We've killed a Warlock. Great. That's nice. That's points equivalent, but not great. They obviously kill any amount of Space Marines with their attacks, especially if you give them lands. So they do damage. They don't kill units reliably by themselves. Not real units, right? Like they will not kill a Rhino, for example. But what they do really well is they win the grind. So they don't just one-shot you, but they will get into combat with you. They will tag you plus something else nearby. And I promise you, if you're not really, really committed, you will not kill all the Screamers in your turn. Never. And then in your turn, they hit you again. And then in my turn, I revive one of the Screamers. And then they fight again. And they fight again and again and again. And they just win all of these long engagements. Always, kind of.
Wow. Where does the reviving a Screamer come from? Is that a command point?
There's a 1 CP strat to heal any demon model. And if it's a Zinj unit, I guess, you also bring back 1 model.
That's such a good strat for Screamers.
Yeah,
wow.
it's incredible.
I never even thought of that. That's amazing.
It's incredible because if you have a Screamer on 1 wound, which is half of the time because 3 wounds, right?
Yeah.
You get back 5 wounds of a T4 Orb Invuln model.
That actually does damage.
That's really
it can hurt basically anything in the game.
Yeah, because they're great against infantry with their strength 6 AP2 damage 2. And of course, with the anti-monster vehicle 4+, they're great into any monster vehicle.
Right.
So again, they don't one-shot anything, but they will win the grind. And if you're falling back with everything, then unless you Emperor's Children, you're usually not, hitting me with that much. And it's not one unit; it's 3 of them. There's 18 screamers, and if I go for the all-in plan, you will have 18 screamers in your whole army. You will not, like, no one kills 18 screamers. Let me tell you that's a big stat check, especially since there's usually a Cursed Cultist unit that's also in melee with you. And since we're talking about damage, the Cursed Cultists are the damage dealer in this army, except for the Bloodthirster. They do so much damage against anything that doesn't have like a 2-up save or Armor of Contempt active, just through sheer volume of number of attacks.
Is that just like the basic Cursed Cultist status sheet with Dark Commune +1 hit, +1 wound, and sustained hits, just like hitting something super hard?
Yeah, like if my opponent has a Knight Lancer, my answer is, hit it with Cultists, and it's probably half dead. And, well, it will lose the fight guaranteed, and I will win that 1v1,
How much of your Cursed Cultist unit is preserved for hitting the right key target as your heavy hitting damage dealer versus used early as an aggressive tempo tool?
So there are oftentimes enemy units that I don't have an answer to unless it's the Cursed Cultist. So, for example, a Knight Lancer, or let's say a Fight First Blade Guard Veteran Squad, stuff like that, and then I'll really try to conserve them for that. But sometimes that's not possible, and sometimes you just have to use them aggressively because of the insane move blocking, objective flipping potential that they have, right? Like, I've had enough games where they kill, 5 scouts, and that's it. But if your opponent then has to use their entire turn killing them, while also being careful of blood surge moves, and falling back with a ton of stuff to detect, that's okay. I've had games where they just fail their charge, right? And it's like, okay, whatever, I still win this. They still did like the job of letting the rest of my army stage really aggressively while you can't go forwards. Like, that's okay, that's fine. That's not a problem. Also, they force your opponent to deploy so passively. With the 9-inch scout and the 6-inch move, they just move so far in turn 1 that your opponent can never deploy like aggressively on the line, or risk just being alpha struck and losing the game turn 1, basically.
Right.
A little bit like World Eaters. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's like kind of a very threatening unit that can be used very multi-purpose, and you just kind of have to figure it out in the moment there.
And a factor that cannot be understated is you kind of have to use them at some point because they take away a lot of space on the map for you, right? Like,
right, they occupy a lot of your hiding spots.
Yeah, your Screamers and your Cursed Cultists occupy the same staging ruins, right?
Right.
Be'lakor helps with the Dawn Up, of course. You don't have to actually be hidden that much, not always. But like, you usually want to send them at least turn 2, unless your opponent is playing like extremely cagey, at which point you're probably fine because the Bloodthirster makes playing cagey very hard for your opponent, right?
Right. Yeah. Now, you have like all this attrition kind of warfare with your Screamers grinding out this melee and your Raptors doing chip damage with their mortal wounds and the plasma guns add up. And you're jailing them a little bit with the Accursed Cultists, or at least you're threatening to. What happens if your opponent can do like fallback and do stuff? And like, how do you operate? Because your army has no fallback and do stuff.
Right. Well, the number one thing, I guess, for me is number one rule: the Bloodthirster never gets stuck. Right? The Bloodthirster always has to go up. He always has to activate every turn if it's possible, and it usually is possible because if your opponent plays passively turn 1, you put him in reserves for 1 CP, rapid ingress him turn 2, and then you will hit something, right?
Yeah.
So at least in turn 2, or at least I guess in your turn 3, he has to activate, right? So he has to be active. So you always have this mobile threat that can handle any flank, right? Be'lakor always stays back unless something really crazy is happening. Be'lakor always stays back. Be'lakor for me activates like turn 4, kind of, or when my opponent is already really struggling.
Right.
But yeah, if your opponent can fall back, like let's say this. Usually one unit in the opponent's army has fallback shoot charge that is very relevant, right? let's say Emperor Children have that on everything, but my Emperor Children matchup is extremely, extremely good for me. So
it's
we
good
can
for you.
kind of, it's
Okay.
extremely good. It's
Wow.
incredibly good for me. I kill them so hard, they kill me very, very badly. Let's say that.
I'm so
they
eager
cannot
to hear
trade
this.
markers. So I don't worry about that, right? And then who else has that? Well, Wotan, like with their bikes, is very scary, and Wotan is one of the harder matchups for sure. I have not had a victory against Tim. I've beaten every other Wotan, but that's the Tim thing, I guess. I don't know. But Wotan is tough. And then if there's like one unit that can do it, again, most units don't kill Screamers that efficiently. Like, to be honest, Screamers are very hard to kill. Some Space Marine Gladius Task Force can be very scary, I think. But again, like Reapers don't kill them efficiently because not infantry. Vindicators have low shot numbers. Like, you need a lot of units to kill one Screamer unit usually.
Right,
So
right.
even if they have the fallback and activate, you usually have enough, I guess.
Are you concerned about getting tied up yourself? Like, 6 Screamers might not kill a Rhino, right? And then you're just stuck.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So when it's this like more slow gameplay, I never commit Screamers to kill something. The goal is always I need to flip this marker, move block this lane, or like tag this stuff here, right? And then the damage is cool to have.
Right.
That's it. Especially because they're very stringy. So I never send Screamers unless it's like a vehicle on 4 wounds or something that I just have to kill. Of course, then they are damage dealers, right?
Yeah.
But you always have to have a different goal with them in mind and be happy if they stay where they need to be. So yeah, like you need to put them in a position where you're okay if they stay there for 2 battle rounds. Because
Makes
they are
sense.
move blocking an angle, they are on an objective, they are taking 2 units, right? And you have enough of these fast moving units that even if your opponent falls back, the next wave will then catch them again. And
are you typically playing one wave at a time with these Screamers? And is that the slow style, or is it like you all use all 18 at the same time?
It's usually so that's different. So one method is having different units be different waves. So because cultists maybe are the first wave. And then the Screamers are changing behind that. And then the Screamers together are the second wave. And then like the Raptors maybe are a bit of the third wave, right? Like that's an option kind of.
Mm-hmm.
The Raptors plus Bellacore, let's say that. That's the difference. Are the third wave.
Right.
A little bit different damage options.
A little bit stronger of a wave.
Yeah. So that's that kind of style that I've used often. Or then otherwise, I usually oftentimes send out individual Screamer units, right, as waves, I guess.
Right.
That's if it's a bit slower and like an all-in is not that attractive, right? Then I send them one by one out. But I usually don't like sending out one by one because, yes, if your army shoots 6 Screamers, they will die. Yes, 100%, right?
Yeah.
But if your army shoots 18 Screamers, they probably live. Like, to be honest, they probably live.
Right.
Yeah.
I've played the 18 Screamer version one time, and I played it against a guard army with like a Rogaldorn, a lot of Legion Russes, all kinds of guns. And I just took a shooting phase to the dome, and I lost 9. Wasn't that bad?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly what I mean. Like, it's like, yeah, sure, cool, whatever, right?
It is incredibly durable. It's like deceptively durable. That -1 to hit goes so far. Right.
Yeah.
Now you don't have that much OC in this army, especially once the Accursed Cultist brick goes down. Then it's all this is OC1 each. How do you handle that?
Right. OC is one of the major problems of this list. So you really need to prioritize holding like your expansion marker. You have to have a really strong plan for holding that. So for example, when you play against, let's say, Chaos Knights with the Warlocks, well, you need to make sure you somehow get like 9 OC on your expansion marker so that they have to put 2 knights on it to flip it, right?
Yeah.
Because when you put 2 knights on there, then you say, okay, cool, you just lost 2 knights for free because Bloodthirster, right? So I will win this attrition one. I can probably all in you turn 3, and then I don't care if you had 10 primary lead until then. That's whatever. You will be tabled if you do that, right? So this is a specific example, but in general, you really need to make sure you prioritize taking down the opponent's fast OC, using the ACDC to flip the opponent's expansion marker. That's my main usage oftentimes, because it is the only high OC bomb you have. And always being aware of where can my opponent's OC go next turn, and do I need to prevent that from happening to hold my markers, right? This is super, super relevant. And then another thing is 5 Raptors that are standing in the open on the middle marker, they die, right? Yeah, but not if you also have like 18 Screamers and ACDC in the opponent's face, where you're saying, if you don't kill them now, you lost the game, right? Suddenly they say, well, these 5 Raptors can chill there for 1 turn. You can get these 5 primaries. That's okay. I need to deal with this in front of me, right? That's another little, I guess, part of that. You also oftentimes can rapid ingress like a cultist unit on the marker that's open in the middle, because again, you are rushing them down and jailing them. So sometimes they cannot screen the rapid ingress on the marker out. So you have some kind of tricks to get like maybe 1 primary point in the game.
Right.
And then you really need to have OC at the front of your mind during the game. Very important.
Makes a lot of sense. I think it's an easy weakness to spot, but maybe not an easy weakness to capitalize on, right? If you're trying to counterplay it, I could definitely see that. So
I think that a
yeah,
sentence is overall a good description of this army, because many things people look at and say, well, I can play around the Bloodthirster. Well, I can play around because he doesn't have much OC. I can play around the ACDC Blood Surge. I can play around the Screamer Mortals and stuff, right? Yeah, sure. Maybe you can play around that, but it's actually very hard to play around that. And I, as the active player, can also, well, make it much harder for you, or play around your ways to play around it, right? So it's a lot of, yes, you can, but actually not. Yeah.
Right. It's playing around any individual thing is easy. Playing around all of it at the same time when you're trying to use it is a lot more difficult. I could totally see that.
If you are listening to this, it probably means you play Warhammer 40k. And if you're playing Warhammer, you know you need a lot of dice. Baron of Dice is where we get our dice from. They produce amazing different kinds of dice. We just recently got all kinds of different faction dice shipped to us, which we use on our stream games. But not only do they look really cool, but they're highly customizable. You can get different symbols, corners that are square, corners that are round, different shapes and sizes, different sided dice. It's all the rage. And they're customizable in color and design as well. They are so cool looking. Not only that, but they feel great to roll in your hands. I've never held dice that roll and feel this good. Not only that, but they are scientifically perfectly balanced. There are tons of case studies on people rolling thousands of dice and recording all the results that they get. And sometimes you might get a die that rolls just a few too many ones. We've all had to throw it out before. These dice are not like that. They are perfectly balanced to a T, thousands of rolls, perfect distribution. If you want to take your Warhammer game seriously and make sure the dice are not screwing you over, get some Baron of dice.
So I'm so eager to talk to you about these matchups in part 2. I just need to know a little bit more about your list building process with this, because Shadow Legion is one of those armies, like you said in the beginning. Where do you even go from here? 54 Nurglings is an option. Blood Crushers and Khorne with advancing charges is an option. I've seen listed 18 Flamers, 18 Screamers. There's no Plague Bearers in your army. How did you come up with it directionally, and how do you know that this is better than all those different potential options?
Right, good question. I have a bit of a kind of creative list building approach, I think, where I oftentimes just throw ideas on the board and see what kind of feels good. I can say that for Shadow Legion, as soon as I had the rules in my hand, I made a list that was like hyper MSU. So I had like 3x3 Screamers, 3x5 Raptors, 3x5 Flash Hounds and stuff like that. And I just thought, hey, all of these units get like individually pretty good, and you're fast and you can tag stuff. And I was like, okay, that's kind of what I like to do with 3 Havocs as well. Like, I kind of thought that's kind of nice, right? Like, Bloodthirster picks up stuff, Havoc shoot stuff, and then I have this tons of small stuff that runs around this action, tags people. And that was my initial idea immediately when I saw this rule set, because I like this playstyle, and it kind of spoke to me immediately. Okay, I look at it and I realize, okay, is this list good? So I have this list ready and made the list, and then I take a fresh look at it. I show it to my friends, my teammates, right? We discuss about it. I hear lots of criticism, like, how the hell are you going to kill anything? Yeah, that's kind of not a lot of stuff. Havocs suck. What are you doing? Right? Like that's what I'm hearing. I take that in.
I hear the same things from my team, and I let it get to me. So you're literally my hero right now, Niklas.
I argue with them that no, shut up. Havocs are awesome. Like, did you see the math I did? Like, look at this. Oh my god. And dude, Raptors. I'm like, yeah, dude, Raptors are right. Like, you discuss and you talk and yada yada, and you take some criticism serious, and some you say no, I'll prove you wrong. You schedule a game, you play the game. You think, okay, they weren't good in this game, but maybe next game they're better, right? You kind of just have to test out some iterations. When you do these test games with the list, I like to play differently from a tournament game. I like to just stress test, like just, hey, this time I'll try and all in. Let's see how much these screamers do to this target. Let's just YOLO in Bellacore early to see what happens then, right? I kind of test out some different scenarios kind of that you might not always play in the real game, but just so you learn what happens and find out, some thresholds, some survivable breakpoints, kind of like all that stuff. And then go back, do a refinement, maybe drop the list for a bit, because Havocs suck. Come back after you've lost your frustration or your teammates were correct that Havocs, yes, they do suck indeed. And look at it again. Make refinements until you. For me, it's always when I see a list like when I see a list on paper, just the list itself in the list builder, and I feel, wow, this is strong. Like I just get this feeling kind of in my heart. It's not even just having it on the table, right? But I just feel it's good. I feel like, okay, this has everything I kind of want. Let's try this out, right? And then suddenly you notice, okay, the Bloodthirster is definitely super strong. Love it. Great. Works. Good. Check. Havocs, didn't work. Okay, what's next? 18 Screamers. Ooh, love it. Great. 15 Raptors. Love it. Great. AC/DC. Love it. And suddenly you're like, okay, I already have like 1,800 of my points fixed. And then the rest is just get filled up with, I know Seekers are great. I know I'm really good at using Seekers. So they are in there. Plague Bearers are cool, but honestly, Cultists do the same job for half the price, because I don't need another unit to push up and be a late game like OC or Toughness Bomb, because I have a ton of stuff already. So let's just put Cultists in it. Nurglings are cool. In this army, my scout moves are much more important than in other demon armies. So 3 Nurglings are not really enough oftentimes to protect my scouts and to put this pressure on opponents. So let's put 6 Nurglings in, and they can also save as backline screeners. So I kind of just get all the building blocks that you need for your gameplay, see if they can all fit in while still having this like core gameplay of the army itself. Have all the tools you need for a successful army, and see if they fit in with the individual parts that make this specific list kind of interesting or good.
That's a really great style. So I've got to ask, I know this is very much how you arrived at this army. Have you tried some of the other extremities, like the infamous 54 Nurgling list, for example?
I gotta say, I have not. That's because I, like, for example, the Nurgling carpet with like pink corals and pigpus, I immediately was like, oh, this is strong. Like I thought that will definitely be strong.
Right.
But I also knew that's not something I can see myself personally playing.
Right.
Like I have experience with trying stuff like that and realized first of all, I'm not.
It's not for you.
I'm not that good at it, first of all, and I'm not enjoying it that much. I know that from Malta's national team, the demon player there, who also played at WCW, he's been playing that style in Shadow Legion. I mean, in Incursion forever. I'm sure he's having great success with that. But it's not for me, so I knew it. I also knew that Khorne spam. Well, every time I tried Khorne, I've been thoroughly disappointed. So I think it's bad, unfortunately. So I knew I'm not playing that. In Nurgle toughness spam, I figured Plague Legion already. I thought that's already really good, but not my playstyle. So like I could cut all of these out of my head, not because they're weak. I think they can be very strong, but because I know that's not where my heart is. I will not be the person to master that list or that playstyle. So let's focus on what I know I'm good at and what I know works for me.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's such a great approach to it. Not only is it going to yield you results that will probably be better in the long run because you'll actually want to practice your army and you'll enjoy your hobby more. And through that, you'll shield for better results. But it's also just a much healthier way to engage with your hobby instead of essentially net listing at the top level or anything like that. So I can commend you on, not trying to chase the dragon in that sense and really finding a list that is your own, works for you, Niklas. I think that's what makes it so inspiring.
Yeah, awesome. And I have to say, I have never played with a list that felt as busted as this list. Like
Really?
even when I was
I've gotta
playing
try
Legion of
this.
Excess, Legion of Excess was strong, but I know I had some bad matchups and everything, and I always had to kind of risk it. Like my matrix was very coin flippy,
Right.
With this list, oh man, I feel so powerful. Like it
It's
feels like
so
I just have this. I finally have this like really lethal weapon in my hands, and I know if I pilot this list well, I get results. Like I feel like I need to do this list justice. Actually, like I need to pilot it well because the list is so strong. It would be a disservice if I make mistakes with it. Which I have not had with my other demon list. I felt strong with them. I had success with them, but I always felt like I'm running it because this is my play style and this is what I like and this is what I'm good at. But I didn't feel like the list itself had power. But this list, holy moly, it's just brutality, honestly.
I am so excited to hear more about that in part 2. Before we get there, I just need to ask one more question for you, Niklas. If
Yeah.
you had a piece of advice you can give a Warhammer player who's trying to get better, what would it be?
Similar to lots of business advice you might hear, surround yourself with other people who like the same thing and who are better players than you, or at least play as much as you, love the hobby as much as you, who want to improve as much as you. This is the number one thing I think that has helped me and my team. And I need to give a quick example of this. We had a teammate, Moritz Klima, who's been with us for around a year. He was really not good when he joined us, and he just hang around with us all the time, supported us at tournaments, didn't really play as our teammate, but just was around. Every day he's on our server talking with us. And just this weekend, he almost won the major I was at, just barely lost in the last round against a German WTC player. He's gotten so good in such a short time, just being around lots of people who are passionate about the same hobby, who want to improve themselves every day. And this, for me, just proved that this is the number one thing. If you want to improve, you got to surround yourself with people who also want to do the same thing.
Makes perfect sense. Awesome, Niklas. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us about your amazing Shadow Legion army. You've got me so excited. I cannot wait to talk about your games in part 2.
Absolutely, me too. Awesome.
Listeners, thank you so much for listening. We can't do the show without you. Week in, week out, your support keeps the lights on and the show talking. So you can support us by going to patreon.com/AOW40K. $5 a month gets you access to this episode's part 2, along with 285 plus other episodes in their part 2s. It is so much Warhammer content. And you get access to our amazing Discord server where you can talk to all the different Art of War coaches and talk about different ideas about list building and all that. You literally can't get enough Warhammer. Join the podcast, Patreon. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. theartofwar40k.com.